Good afternoon, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the afternoon of Friday, November 11th, 2022. And it's Veterans Day. Well, but November 11th is a lot more than Veterans Day. And here's the rest of the story entitled Philadelphia. Well, Americans, 1793 was a tough year for Philadelphia. The summer was hot and dry, so dry that it developed a lot of standing water all over the place. The river that ran through the city stank like high heaven. Mosquitoes were all over the place. And the epidemic started. People started dying. At first, it was one person a day, 2 people a day. Then it was 4, 10. And by the end of the week, you had a lot of people dying. Casualties were many. And remember, this was Philadelphia in 1793, population around 55,000, and it was the capital of the United States. Washington, D.C. hadn't been finished yet. But the epidemic got so bad that by June, the government had ceased to operate sometime late April, early May. And most of them were all over the place. Washington was over in his Mount Vernon home. Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton was sick with the disease. The doctors didn't know what to do. They were trying all over the place. But one doctor found out what the disease was. They knew what it was, they just didn't know how to treat it. Yellow fever. I'm familiar with yellow fever from my home country. Oh boy, am I familiar with yellow fever. Yeah. Well, so the doctors were doing everything they could. Remember, this 1793 was in between the old and the modern way of medicine. So you were doing everything, including bloodletting and everything else. Some of it didn't help any. Others, well, it hastened the death. So people were dying faster with the medicines they were getting there. Whew, poor guys. So by the end of June, it was so hot there, and people were just dying left and right, and people just left. James Madison was over in Germantown, and they were supposed to have the Congress meet there. Okay. And the summer came up, July, August, and then September. September was a bad month. By the time September rolled around, in the first week of September, you were getting 1,400 a week dying out of a population of 55,000. That was terrible, wasn't it? Makes our pandemic look like, yeah. Well, and there was this lady, Southern lady, Dolly Payne. And she was trying to help as much as she could, but it got to the point where people were not even going. If you died, whether you were the kid, the husband, or whatever it was, they would throw you on the street and not even look at you. That's how bad it was. And this is on the history. Look it up, people. Okay? So, poor Mrs. Payne, Dolly Payne, she lost her mother, her father, her sister, her husband, and her kid, all to this disease, and she caught it, but survived it. barely. But she survived it. But here we are in late September, and the temperature is turning colder, which is helping. The mosquitoes are starting to die. It's getting colder and colder. But the people, they have stopped counting, so they don't see the change. They're hunkered down in their homes with shutters closed, windows closed. They don't even look at the outside. They don't want to see the outside. And by middle of October, it got even worse because Madison is saying from Germantown, we got a problem here. We're looking at a phantom here in the city of Philadelphia. Meanwhile, they got cold, and the plague was, there were still people dying, maybe one a week, and it got to the point where there was 1 week that nobody died. And then came November 11th. And the people were still shut in. All of a sudden, one person started screaming because there's this guy on a horse at the end of the entrance to Philadelphia on the main street. And he is on this big white horse with gray hair and shades of his what used to be red hair on him. And he's galloping so they can hear his hoofs. He's going at a slow crawl through the city, looking to see if anybody's opening their doors or anything like that. Slowly but surely, the people started opening the doors. And then you hear a clamor of people behind them that are coming in, refugees. And you start seeing the people opening the doors as he's going along the main streets of Philadelphia with people behind him and people starting to opening the doors. And he does that all over the city till he gets them all open. And who was this guy in a big white horse with graying hair? Why, none other than your president, George Washington, who saved the day for Philadelphia, saved the day for the United States government. If it wasn't for him, well, there wouldn't have been a second term. There wouldn't have been a United States, probably. But do you see that in the history books? No. How many people died in the Philadelphia scourge of yellow fever? Well, they don't really know. They stopped counting. But according to them and the Indians, this happened every 70 years in the Philadelphia area. And remember, this was 100 years before Walter Reed would answer what it was. As for Miss Dolly Payne, she would remarry a year later, and you know her as Dolly Madison. And the date, November 11th, 1793, a date that should have been inched in the United States lore, like December 7th. But no, nobody remembers it today. But now, you know the rest of the story. Sitting in for Paul Harvey, this is your favorite alien. Good day.